Hello, this is Madeline Hosley. I'm a professor of international relations here at Leiden University, and I'm very happy to welcome everyone to our live Google Hangout, which is the product of the specialization in challenges to global affairs, and on which many of you have made very important contributions. You have written very good essays, and this is like a crowning event for many of us of this course. So having said this and having given the introduction, we'll have a very interesting session today because we have the three teachers involved in this specialization track: Professor Griffiths from Leiden University and Dr. Lea Stadler from the University of Geneva. And we have 5 participants today of our specialization who have been ending up very high in the ranking on this final project. So we're very proud to have everyone on board. Let me now first pass on to the University of Geneva to Dr. Stadler.
Okay, sorry for the delay. So big welcome from my side. My name is Lea Stadler, as Madeleine has actually already introduced me. From my side, a big thank you to everyone for the great essays that you actually submitted and the big effort that you have done and the time you have invested in reading the essays and doing the peer assessment. So I think without you, this wouldn't have worked that well. So a big thank you. So at this point, we would like to give you some more information about the process that we have taken to actually evaluate your essays. Because to our great surprise, we had 78 essays that actually have the best grade, so the highest grade. So we had a look at each of them in order to select the best. And so what criteria did we actually use to select the best? So once again, we stick to the criteria that we have set up front. And all of the essays were really good, so we were really impressed. But there have been some slight differences in terms of how clearly stated is the research question. Or is this just an essay about a general topic? So there were some differences in terms of the research question. Secondly, there were some differences in terms of how critically did the student actually work on the topic. So to what extent did he or she bring in different perspectives and viewpoints? And finally, I think also a criteria that made a difference was to what extent does the author build on the Moocs and explicitly linked to the Moocs and build on resources. So I think these were some of the criteria that then actually helped us in selecting the best, which was definitely not an easy task. So once again, we were really impressed by the quality of your essays, and it was really a lot of fun and really interesting to read through the essays. So thank you once again. So here we have then come up with the best 15 who will get actually a certificate. And so we're very happy to have 5 of them join us today to shortly present their paper. But more about that by actually Richard. So I hand over to Richard from University of Leiden.
Yeah, thank you very much, Leah. I'm Richard Griffiths from International Studies. I'm Professor of International Studies here, and I've been directing the Configuring the World project. And I can just endorse what Leah's been saying. We read the essays, and I was stunned by the range of material that you brought in, and especially by the fresh perspectives that come. We tend to be used to reading essays written from within our own disciplines, and the freshness of approach, the directness, I suppose that was the word limit, but the directness that you had to the issues that you were facing was really very good, and it was incredibly difficult to select the best, but we did our best, and here you are. I have to say, I think for all of us teaching, it's been a very unique experience, a very rewarding experience that this is possible, and the fact that you are here, I think, is fantastic, because we just deal through forums and broadcasting into cyberspace, but to actually have the chance to interact with you today is a privilege for all of us, and we're looking forward to it, have been for a while. So without any further ado, I'd like to turn over now to John Garrett from the United States, who wrote on transnational advocacy networks and their possible role in resolving the crisis in the Sudan. So John, I pass the microphone over to you.
Thank you, Dr. Griffiths. Can you hear me? Okay, all right. So, my name's John Garrett, and the title of my paper was The Effect of Transnational Advocacy Networks in resolving the Sudan crisis. And my research question was, what effect do transnational advocacy networks, TANs, have in helping to resolve the humanitarian crisis, such as that in Sudan? Especially, I focused on the crisis in Darfur. And the conflict in Sudan has been raging for on and off since the 1950s. And I looked at the transnational network, transnational advocacy network, the Save Darfur Coalition. For me, the big Mooc sessions that were impressive in helping me to write this paper were the 3.2, video 3.2 of the International Organizations Mooc that dealt with hierarchical actors and networks, the tension between the two, and also the critical political economy video 8.3, and you talked about maps of Griffiths, and also the global order 3.2 and 3.3 with the professor there, and they were talking more about how to negotiate, mediate between parties. Really, I'm interested in the tension between hierarchical actors and networks, and trying to guess what kind of synthesis could happen from this tension. And I think that TANs can get locked in, like most organizations, into a pre-existing frame of thinking, and that might end up being counterproductive to their stated goals. Where TANs are valuable in raising public awareness, hierarchical actors such as the United Nations or even states have expertise in diplomacy. Here I kind of looked at the celebrities that TANs were using. Especially I was very impressed by George Clooney's statement that he was very regretful about the situation. And I read that in one article about how celebrities really aren't locked in, and but they're very influential. And therefore, I kind of thought that an organization such as the UN could possibly approach these same celebrities that TANs employ, and that these celebrities could kind of act as gatekeepers in reframing the TANs' existing frame, and try to bring in an organization such as the United Nations to provide stewardship for the TANs. So, I hope that was 60 seconds.
I wasn't timing, but thank you very much, John. I've got a question that's from me to you, but how did you find the forums in the Moocs, and especially in this last session? Did you use them at all? Did you get any support from that direction?
Yeah, with the Moocs, I have to say I was really a taker and not a giver. And I apologize for that. I really wasn't giving much. I was kind of under a lot of time constraints, and I was browsing through things, taking what I could, and I really apologize to people for not participating more. So, but I did take a lot from the Moocs, and I'm very thankful for the people who, basically my paper was helped by a lot of other people, to be honest, and I appreciate that. And I promise to try to give back in the future. So, sorry.
I didn't know the answer to that question when I asked it. Okay, thank you, John. I'd like to bring in Ali Shurki now. I hope I got the pronunciation right, but it's not my strongest point. On the question of why should Turkey disengage from the whole regime change situation in Syria. So I pass the microphone over to you now, Ali.
Yes, my name is Ali Shukri, and my research question was why Turkey should disengage from the regime change game in Syria, which is also the title of my essay. While analyzing Turkish involvement in the current war in Syria, the essay made use of the knowledge that acquired from the Global Affairs MOOC specialization course. In particular, modules related to IR theories, conflict analysis and resolution, and global geopolitical economy. The essay ends up with the conclusion that Turkey must quit the regime change game in Syria as soon as possible and to engage in post-war regional arrangements in order to prevent further damage to its national interest as well as to regional and global security and peace. Because turning Syria into a failed state is not in the interest of the international community and peace. Also, the essay suggests an exit strategy for Turkey from this current involvement by working closely with Russia and Iran, who are the main allies of the regime in Syria, to make the best arrangement to Turkey to exit from this game and to probably potentially also gain some geopolitical benefits, such as those related to strategic energy project in the region. I hope I didn't exceed the time.
Okay, thank you very much, Ali. I've got a question for you too, because I didn't realize till we saw your bio that you actually come originally from Syria.
Yes.
How personal was this essay for you?
Yes, actually, I'm half Syrian and half Turk, probably, because my origin is Turkish. So I think I am emotionally balanced to give an objective opinion in this conflict.
Do you have a solution for it?
A solution? It is too complex, actually. I only analyzed the situation from Turkish perspective. The problem is far more complicated.
Certainly is. Okay, thank you very much, Ali. I'll now go across and pass the microphone through to Katie Phelps, who again is engaged in a raging crisis, the one in the Ukraine this time. So I pass the microphone over to you, Katie.
Sure. As you said, my name is Katie, and like I'm sure many of my fellow students, I chose to write about the crisis in Ukraine. What might have been different is I assert in my paper that I think that the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe should be a leader in seeking a resolution to this crisis. So the OSCE, Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe. And that was essentially my thesis. I then linked my paper to what we learned in the Moocs by first looking at the conflict through the lenses of three of the main theories in international relations, namely realism, liberalism, and constructivism, and found that, well, none of them can completely explain the crisis to my satisfaction, that they certainly all three do give us a better understanding of the problem and possible insight into the motivations of the key players. Then I spent much of my paper looking at the mandate and capacity of the OSCE and ultimately asserted the following solution: that the OSCE could create a Ukraine crisis negotiation team. That's my term, this does not exist. That would comprise the current trilateral contact group, which does really exist, but then would pull in members from France and Germany so as to mirror the composition of the Normandy format discussions. And the reason for this would be because I believe that the OSCE can act as a facilitator facilitation being another concept that we learned in our Moocs as a strategy for mediation, I asserted that the OSCE could facilitate negotiation by organizing both the higher level summits incorporating the Normandy Four, which have not been meeting as often maybe as they want, and certainly there was a lot of difficulty getting them to meet at all in February. But then also, so using their diplomatic clout and their skill to organize the higher level summits, but also to create working groups at lower levels to engage in political dialogue and practical solutions. And hopefully that's a minute.
Excellent. Well, within the minute. Can I ask you a question as well? Because now that the front seems to have settled, would you adjust your conclusions in any way, or is there still a role?
I absolutely think there's a role, and I wish that I could have written my paper following the February 12th. But what I would see now going forward is that the OSCE still would be a leader, but there are three fronts with the current ceasefire. There's sorry about that. There's the continued facilitation of political dialogue, because while we have this ceasefire that in some people's opinion may or may not be working, and it certainly has its problems, we need to continue the political dialogue, and so that's one way in which the OSCE is still very relevant. And the second point is that they need to monitor the package of agreements. And the OSCE obviously has the capability to do that in that it has its special monitoring missions, it has its border control missions, and so I think that it has the capacity there and is needed in that respect. And then in the third aspect of the implementation of the packages, I think that there are some aspects that the OSCE would continue to lead this. For example, let's see. The withdrawal of heavy weaponry, the special monitoring missions, the SMMs, could observe some of those. But certainly they would also need to pull in support from other international organizations. And the chairperson from the OSCE met with the United Nations Security Council on the 24th of February and got their support. And so we could see perhaps that OCHA could help with the humanitarian assistance, or perhaps the IOM could help with the point on returning internally displaced people. But in short, yes, the OSCE should still be a leader in seeking the resolution to the problem, certainly not alone.
Okay, thank you very much, Katie. We'll see that essay in the rerun then when we have the next capstone. Okay, thank you. I'm going to pass the microphone now over to Roger France Arumi. If I've totally destroyed your name, I apologize for that. Who wrote a critical analysis of organized crime. So I pass the mic over to you.
Thank you, Professor. Hello, everyone. I focused my project on organized crime, as Professor Richard said. In fact, it was titled Organized Crime, Critical Analysis. I chose two different research questions to guide my project. The first one was, what are the consequences of organized crime in our society? And the second one, how do international organizations work in order to reduce or try to eradicate this transnational issue? When doing my analysis, I decided to use four concepts of the Configuring the World MOOC, seeing the correlation that the state failure, control of corruption, good governance, and trust have with the presence of organized crime activities, focusing in four different countries: Russia, Thailand, Mexico, and Colombia. I tried to look at some of the work of some international organizations like the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime, the Interpol as a global one, and the Europol, making a specification in Europe, and looking at what they do to combat the presence of criminal organizations. They work with affected countries, and how do they try to establish a police and political cooperation. I came up with a conclusion, many, but one of those was that the reason that these countries are highly affected is because they have weak governmental institutions and a lack of police cooperation that leads to a low control of corruption and porous borders. The thing that probably surprised me most was that the low control of corruption that Russia has, and also the low level that of Colombia, but also from Mexico as well. I hope that was 1 minute.
Was indeed. You're a full-time student, I believe. Is that true?
Well, part-time.
How did you find the time to be able to write between all your other activities to write this essay?
I think that, well, because I enjoy writing about security issues, and I also did some projects when I was doing my final work in the school, and I did it about organized crime. So I think that when you enjoy doing something, you try to search time. I don't know how to say it, but you know, you try to do it as you could.
That was very good. Okay, I'm going to pass the microphone now to Ricardo Silva, who wrote on piracy in the Gulf of Guinea. So over to you.
Hello, good afternoon, Professor. Hello to all. So my name is Ricardo Silva. I come from Portugal, and the theme of my challenges in global affairs final project was, in fact, piracy in the Gulf of Guinea, trends, international context, and policy responses. The actual research question is about which policy responses would be most effective in reducing the occurrence of piracy in the Gulf of Guinea. This research was basically based on bibliographical sources. It might be interesting to follow that up and gather other sources, of course. And it was informed by all the three Moocs, with most emphasis in changing global order contents, naturally. From the research, I built up a simple theoretical model that organizes the causes and drivers of piracy along the west coast of Africa. And from that, I came up with 3 possible policy lines to confront the problem, which I found is much more complex than the problem on the east coast of Africa that we all know about from the news. So it's a very, very interesting. My academic background is actually in the management sciences. So it was very interesting to change over to a different academic area.
No, I enjoyed it very much. It was one of the ones that I'd read. And here you've applied your practical knowledge in an academic context. Was that very difficult for you, or was it just an easy transition for you to make?
Not quite sure. Probably I took up the problem with a management outlook to it, but trying to get information and read up on the international relations theory. That basically is essential to make sense of what possible actions you could put on to confront the problem.
Yep. Okay. I've been hogging the questions. I've been totally abusing my position by asking all of you a question. So I'm going to hand back over to Madeline. I'm sure she's got questions for you all as well, and then to Leah, and perhaps I can come back later on. So, Madeline, I'm going to pass the chairing over to you to carry on the discussion a bit further.
Yes, thank you very much. Here we are. Okay, thank you so much. This was like a glimpse of some of the projects that we have had in the specialization track. And I should say that each of your papers, I think, was extremely interesting to read. It brought us on to new avenues of thinking. And also the fact, of course, there's always a lesser and a larger extent of this, but the fact to which extent you integrated concepts and approaches of these 3 different Moocs into your paper. I thought that was very fascinating because that's exactly what we want to see. We want to kind of see the synergy between the different approaches. And of course, if you think about challenges in global affairs, there is so much out there. And it is so fascinating. It was probably difficult sometimes to find a topic. Now, I should say from the papers that we have seen today, that were just being summarized, but also for some of the other papers, this is true. Sometimes you sense this true motivation in terms of trying to solve an issue or contribute to something. For example, a conflict, a very important conflict in which it is so difficult to find a solution, or a challenge to an international organization, or maybe the difficulty to really understand the phenomenon and to carry data into that and interpret that from different ways. So I thought it is very fascinating to see that the devotion in which this is being done, and very often it's not just a dry kind of academic exercise, if you wish, but a true motivation to add something to solving a problem in reality. And I must say personally that I was very, very much impressed by that. And it is great if all of us have a chance to learn from each other, to see how the tools to potentially solve issues can actually be learned and can be exchanged, and how we can benefit. And I do hope in the peer review that you had a similar impression as we did. There is a lot to be gained from reading the essays. And again, of course, yes, now we have a few people on board who really had what we think very good essays, but there were also other essays out there. I apologize that we can't invite everyone to come into this online session, but again, very, very good essays, and we will make sure indeed that you also get the recognition for this that you deserve. So let me just say, as a quick response to some of the papers we have seen now, and also in general to the process, thank you all for having put in that much effort. And again, it's really a collective learning experience in which we are participating. Having said that, it really gets time for me to get quiet again and to pass on to Leah Stadler in Geneva.
Yeah, first of all, thank you for the five of you for having presented and summarized your paper within this short time frame of 1 minute. But I think it showed us that the essays really cover a large area of different topics that are all very, very interesting. And there are even more in the sample of our essays. And I was really surprised with my special interest in managing international organizations. So the new ideas that have come from these papers, and especially also for me, it has been a learning process. And so from this perspective, I would like to encourage you to continue the discussion and maybe use the forum once again to actually share your learnings that you have made in the peer assessment process, or some ideas that you would like to share, because I think these are things that we can continue our discussion on. So once again, I've been impressed really by the topics, choice of topics, also the quality of how you treat difficult theoretical concepts and apply them to the to practice. So for me, it has also been a very inspiring and also joyful experience. So with that, a big thank you once again to everybody involved in this MOOC to make it such a great success and such a great learning experience, I think, for everyone involved. So with that, I will hand back to Madeleine.
I have been talking into the screen without a tone, so I better say again what I was just saying. Apologies. So from the teaching side, yes, it has been a very valuable experience. And I think in terms of our hangout today, what I'd like to do is first, obviously, I'll pass on again to my colleague, Professor Richard Griffiths, to say a few general final words. But I want to give each and every participant also the chance to very briefly get back on this process, on the MOOC, on your experience, to just round off your own ideas on this. So again, at this point, let me first forward again the picture to Professor Griffiths.
Yep, thank you very much, Madeline. I think that would be very interesting from you, because we'll answer your questions in a minute if you've got any questions about us or our involvement. But this hangout will be watched by other students, and we'll probably use a clip when we do this again, because we will be doing it again. And I hope that you might agree to come in as teaching assistants and give us a hand within the forums, because that would be great, because then we can pass on your experiences. But I want to ask you, each of you in turn, to say in a couple of sentences what you've got out of the experience and what you would advise somebody else who is starting this process now of doing 3 tracks and then coming to a capstone. If you could recommend why they should do it and how they should do it in order to try and make it a success. But I'm going to go on your experience first. I'm going to pass the microphone first then through to John Garrett. John, over to you.
Okay, so yeah, I'm still trying to think about this. If I could pass it on to somebody else, I'd be very pleased to do so. But I'll give it a shot. Yeah, I think it was really, you know, when I developed this paper, I actually used the peer review that I did in the first class that I took, which was the global affairs class, I believe. Challenges, I forget the name exactly, but that class I talked about Sudan, just the crisis and mediating the crisis. I didn't talk about transnational advocacy networks at all. But when I was researching that, I kind of found this other celebrity situation, and George Clooney saying about how disappointed he was, and he felt some regret and so on, and that was very interesting for me. And then from there, I went into a more specific area of that crisis to help develop my paper. And I think that's really, for me, that was really important, was using the first paper that I had written to help develop my second paper, just for myself. So I'll just pass back to you now.
Right, thank you very much. That's a very good insight. I can see that being a good strategy to gradually build up on an interest, especially if your first paper, of course, was something that you were committed to. So you go deeper and deeper at different levels. I'll go across now to Ali and ask, what advice would you have for someone beginning this journey that you are finishing for the time being with us?
Yeah, in fact, this was my first formal course in political science. I was always interested in this field, but unfortunately, I made the wrong decision 30 years back when I chose to go to technology and engineering. My first advice is to dedication is key. I enrolled in many other online courses, but I didn't have such a dedication like the one I had in this one. So I think this is the key for success. You have to take online education seriously and to allocate the right time. Probably I had this dedication because of my very strong interest in the field. The material was great, actually. Video lectures and quizzes, reading material. I mean, you have everything, and you have your the luxury of choosing the time. So this was my first successful and full experience with online learning.
Okay, thank you very much, Ali, for sharing those thoughts with us. Yeah, it's dedication. There is a lot to do and a lot of things surrounding it, and obviously, yes, some commitment and interest, and the combination is very important.
Yeah.
I'm going to pass the microphone through now to Katie to ask what your thoughts are on this question.
I would like to echo what Ali had said, just in terms of my appreciation and regard for the way that the course was set up. This actually isn't my first online class. I live overseas right now and I move a lot. And so whenever I want to learn something or expand my education, it's really hard for me to take advantage of brick and mortar institutions, and so I've gone to some online institutions to seek degrees, and I've had very good results, and the institutions are very highly regarded. But the fact that the way that this course was set up, with integrating so well the videos and the forums and the quizzes, I thought that it was even better done than some of the courses I've paid for and degrees that I've paid for, and so I was really impressed with that. And since this was my first Coursera course, I went to take other Coursera courses and found that not all the universities were as professional as the University of Leiden and University of Geneva in the way that they take this seriously and really want to engage with the students. And so I would like to express my appreciation that this wasn't just a free course to you, as it was really very instructive and beneficial for me as a student. So that, I think, is really good for perhaps any future students to know that they're getting really top quality information and instruction. My bit of advice, I think, to students starting out is something that I did that was really useful, and that was to take notes and to keep notes as I went. For me, that's on the computer, just in a Word document, but particularly of key concepts and definitions or things that I want to refer to later, because when it came time to write my paper, I didn't really remember very well what I'd learned in the first course, but I was able to pull up my notes and, oh yeah, that's what realism is, and this is that. And so it really helped to refresh my mind. So I think just keeping quick notes and maybe links to useful websites or resources was particularly useful for me as I was trying to write my final paper.
Okay, thank you very much, Kate, especially for those kind words in our direction. I have to say that we're surrounded by a staff that almost make it like walking on clouds. I think that's for both us and Geneva. It's not just us in the foreground, but we have very good support from the universities behind us. Otherwise, it would be just a crazy undertaking. Roger, I'd like to ask your opinion. And one thing that I really like about this group is that we stand from age from 20s into late 50s and all points in between. And I'm an outlier at the other end. I go beyond the 57s as well. It's the wide range of expertise that we get. So as a young perspective, where there are a lot of other temptations, other things outside, how come that you have managed to do so well and committed to this course? So over to you.
Thank you. Well, I think that I've been always interested in security issues and in particular organized crime, but also terrorism. I have also enrolled some other Moocs and presential courses about terrorism and organized crime. And I don't know, I think that I don't really know why organized crime came to me, because I live in a quite safety country. But yeah, I've been always interested, and when I enrolled this course, one thing that may intimidate people is that there is 3 courses and a final project, and I think that this is what makes it special. That is not it is not one course, it's 3 courses. There is a lot of work to do. There are lots of data, lots of topics to work. And when you finish, when you are in the capstone project, you can choose your topic, choose your maybe area of expertise, and develop your work with the things that you have learned. What you have said about recommended, I have done this to many friends, and they say that if you, the leading university and the people from Geneva decided to run these 3 courses again, they are definitely going to jump in this great experience, I would say.
Okay, well, thank you very much. You can tell your friends that Configuring the World is running at the moment. If they've missed it, it'll rerun in September, and that Madeleine's course is going to kick off at the end of May. So we're in the next cycle already. So let's hope they introduce themselves in the forums and say that they were recommended by you. We'll have high expectations of them. Okay, thank you very much. I'm now going to pass over to Ricardo for the last contribution, and then I'll pass back to Madeleine, and she will then lead the questions. I feel I'm hogging this, because I think you're entitled to ask us some questions as well, so, or a question each. We've still got time for that. So, Ricardo, over to you.
So my quick word would be to underline the amazing opportunity these courses are, specifically for someone that has a full-time job or occupation. And just 2 or 3 years ago, it would be impossible to gain access to such quality education with the ease that we can get access to today. So this is an amazing change. A quick word of advice would be maybe to take to look up and explore the bibliographical sources cited by the professors and cited on the courses. It's a great way to have a solid bibliographical window that you can explore and learn in areas that you didn't know anything beforehand. So that might be my quick advice.
Okay, thank you very much. Madeleine, I'm going to pass it over to you to take charge. Madeleine, you've got to switch off your microphone.
Exactly. That's when you have to press the buttons here that you keep forgetting, and just listening to your colleague. And let's make sure we are actually also being heard here. Thank you so much for this advice. I think it was extremely valuable. I'm afraid that given the time, we will not be able to have an extensive round of question-answer at this point. We can, of course, always email when we have very specific questions. I thought that the advice and the experience that you have just described are also very valuable to us, because we realize that very often, indeed, different challenges have to be combined in order to be able to really take such a course, and such an advanced course, if you wish. Because if you do this capstone, you indeed have already achieved a given level, and then to do this project and be successful, that's like another level. So it's very good for us to hear from you who managed to do this, like what the motivation was, why you actually took the course, and what your experiences were. And of course, also, if there are weak points, we'll also be very interested in hearing this. You were a bit the pioneers. Indeed, Professor Griffiths has mentioned that there are most likely going to be follow-ups in this format, but it was great actually to see how this worked out. And still, I'm very impressed that sometimes we also get people coming in with very different backgrounds, and then moving into a discipline, into a subject that they're so much interested in. And the courses, of course, help to acquire the tools that are necessary to do so. So I assume that we could have a very, very brief moment where additional questions can be asked, but before I do this, it really gets time to pass on again to Leah Stettler at Geneva to briefly comment, and then we have a last short round where we can ask questions, and then unfortunately we will have to start closing today's session. All right, Leah Stettler, please.
Yeah. So thank you very much for sharing your insights, what you have learned, and what kind of advice you would give to other Mooc users. And I think this is really important because, as you also have mentioned, you have other obligations, and the MOOC course is just for your personal education. But I really like the point that has been raised, so that you have to be motivated, and by actually going through the different topics, there are some that really get your attention and where you think, okay, this is something where I want to go into depth and really enlarge my knowledge. And so I think the capstone project is here a really good opportunity to go there into depth. And so my learning here is that probably during the 3 MOOCs, we could highlight from time to time that if there are topics that are particularly interesting, the students should note them and take into account when they search their research project, so for the essay. So thank you very much for the advice or the hints that you have given us from that perspective, and we will use it definitely in the next courses. So I think we are getting better and better on the way, and this is not only with regard to the MOOCs, but also with regard to applying theoretical frameworks to the practical challenges that we are actually encountering in our world. So I think that this MOOC has really been a great step towards clarifying things and advancing our shared knowledge to that extent. So thank you very much for the advice and for the great input from everyone. So back to Madeleine.
Okay. As promised, we'll have a last occasion right now to just ask very brief questions that you as the participants in our specialization and in today's Hangout may actually have for us. So we'll just use a few more minutes if you have such questions, and we'll do our very best to have appropriate answers. I'm not sure we can answer everything, and while I say that, there has also been a question, it seems, from one of our viewers who asks whether we'll also move into some other challenges in global affairs, including climate change, for example, and there are other topics like population dynamics, and I can maybe only say a lot actually has already been integrated in some of the essays, but maybe those are also interesting topics to look at in projects in the future. But now, let us open up again in terms of the participants we have in today's Hangout and ask whether you have any specific question to us. Wow! That means we answered a lot already in today's Hangout. All right.
I have one question for the 3 professors. What did you motivate to give an online course, and you know, or which is open to many people? What did you motivate?
Can I suggest that I'll first ask Leah to answer that, then Richard Griffiths, and then I'll also have an answer to that. So, Leah.
Yeah, so it's a very interesting question, thank you. So what made me actually do this online course, or to teach the online course? I think first is the opportunity to reach out to such a big community. And as you know, so my particular topic or area of interest are public-private partnerships. And in that area, I'm also very interested in understanding how they work in different regions and in different parts of the world. And so I was very happy to receive a couple of partnership descriptions that you've sent to me and that we have now uploaded on our research center website. So why I joined this course is really to reach out to this really diverse community, and also to engage in the forums where I think there have been a lot of interesting questions that have been raised. So I think it's the next generation of learning. It cannot replace the things that are there, but I think it's definitely a specific niche that is going to be filled here, and I want to be part of that. So that was my motivation. Thank you.
Let us pass on to Richard Griffiths.
Yeah, I think I've got two levels of an answer to that. The first was about a decade and a half ago. I actually taught and linked classrooms together with University of California while sitting in Leiden. And we joined the students together right across cyberspace. This was way before Moocs or anything else was discussed. So I've always had an interest in what's the next step forward. But the precise reason was that we started a new BA course here, which suddenly got 350, 450 students. And so we started doing blended learning using broadcasting and recording in order to supplement the lectures. And then I was here in The Hague, and the people who run this entire scheme for us are over my right shoulder. They're literally the other side of the corridor from me. So we were talking about blended learning, Moocs were coming up, Madeline's my next door neighbor, and it seemed a fabulous opportunity. There was no way on earth I was going to miss this chance to push these frontiers with you. I think it's going to be an addition, a valuable addition to the context of learning and also university learning. I don't think it's going to replace university learning, but it's going to enrich university learning, and that you don't see very often in the debate. It's always, we're going to wipe out universities, or we're one big hype. It's one or the other. I don't see it at all. It's like when the printed book was invented. Lecturers didn't suddenly go out of business. They supplemented their learning with another resource, and I think this is what we're going to become as well, with the addition that people who are not in a time and place can also then have access to this particular medium, such as you have had. So I wouldn't have missed this for the world.
That very nicely summarizes, I think, some of the incentives. I can only join my colleagues Leah Stadler and Richard Griffiths in terms of summarizing the experience. I should say that, of course, we know there is sometimes a bit of a debate out there with this online learning, what should happen in class, and I can only second the opinion that the complementarity of the tools can be extremely fascinating. I should also say that in terms of the reach, when we look indeed at all the individuals who are for us sometimes sitting behind the camera, to put it that way, because we don't see everyone in the picture, it gets even more fascinating when we have the live contributions on the forum, for example, or actually in the specialization, where there is much more of a true interaction that we can also sense. And I think that's a wonderful addition. I am very, very fascinated, I must say, that courses can sometimes reach out to maybe corners of the world where we don't expect maybe to get the reaction and the enthusiasm about the course, but then we see it's there, and maybe actually it's very helpful. Maybe we can actually spread some of the knowledge that can be very crucial. I'm immediately thinking, of course, again about things like mediation, conflict resolution is natural in the own course, but where we see that these concepts actually are maybe being used and they can be applied. So this is another kind of motivation, I must say, to engage in this. Having said that, from my slide, I'm starting to close today's session. I'm going to, from my side, just say goodbye. Thank you, everyone, those of you who were involved in the Hangout today, and also those of you who are watching it, who have contributed with your essays. Thank you very much for having participated in this kind of pioneering exercise of doing this specialization. So I'll say goodbye from my side. Thanks to all of you, also notably the participants today who summarized their papers and who also presented this, and everyone watching this. Let me pass on for final words to my colleague, Leah Stadler. Sorry, I'm afraid we may not hear you. I'm so sorry to interrupt. I think we have a microphone problem at the very end of today's Hangout. Leah Stadler, we don't totally hear you. Can we try one more time? And if not, then I think I'll know approximately what you might have wanted to be saying. Can we try one more time? We pass on again to Leah Stadler.
Okay, can you hear me now? Okay, and I will make it very short because Madeleine, you have framed it already so nicely that I won't repeat everything. So just a big thank you for everybody who has been involved in this MOOC and for submitting your really interesting essays, for doing the peer assessment, especially also for the 5 of you who have joined us today in the Google Hangout. So thank you very much. It has also been for me a very pleasant and interesting learning journey. Thank you.
Then quite naturally, the final words go to my colleague next door, Richard Griffiths. And I'm surprised we haven't had a final joke yet. We didn't have the rabbits today. We didn't have other animals yet. It gets time we get this in. Okay, final word for Richard Griffiths.
Now, I haven't got a joke, but I do have some serious comment. Madeleine is next door, is my next door neighbour, a fabulous colleague. But I want to thank Leah particularly. Leah and I haven't met. Our contacts with Geneva have been entirely over Skype and over email. And she's been a fabulous colleague. You've been a delight, Leah, to work with and to work with Geneva. This is this is also an opportunity. It's not just working with you. We wouldn't have worked in this way so closely with Leah and her team in Geneva had it not been for the MOOCs. It's been really fruitful and easy, and you've made it so easy. And your team has been fabulous, a great partner. I look forward to working closer with you in the future as well. So that's a particular personal point from me, and you don't get a chance to reply, so haha. But again, to all of the participants and the hundreds that you've represented, because you are the tip of an iceberg of a community that represents something that's really unique. And I sense that it's not just your contact with us, but also that there is a real sense of academic community out there in cyberspace without an actual place and a time together. And I think that deserves further study. But I think we're on the beginning of something new, something big. I'm pleased to have been part of it. I am privileged to have been able to work with you individually and to see your work. And I hope that we're going to be able to publish your work further so that others can also be inspired and be guided by what you've done. I want to wish you all the very best in your future careers, and I hope that we get to meet each other at some point in a forum out there in cyberspace at some point in the future. So from me as well, it's goodbye.
I think with these amazing words, there is very little that we can add. I can only support also the part of the collaboration between our universities that has worked out so smoothly. So thank you again to everyone. This was wonderful. Also, indeed, we will be making available some of your work. Of course, you will be asked for permission to do that, but we found that this is very valuable, and we're very thankful for your contributions. So again, thank you to everyone who participated or watched today's Hangout. This was indeed the Google Hangout of the Global Affairs project, the Challenges to Global Affairs Specialization final project. That kind of was at the top of 3 MOOCs offered, indeed, 2 by Leiden University and 1 by the University of Geneva, that content-wise were really speaking to each other, and in which it made sense to have this final capstone project. Thank you all for having participated, and we hope you will all stay in touch with each other. Some of you will stay very closely in touch with each other online, and some of you hopefully will also stay in touch with us. Goodbye. Thank you for today's Hangout. Goodbye.